I'm Catherine Arndt, the Chief of the VLGA Connect studio. Welcome to today's episode, brought to you by the VLGA, your counsellor support network and the national broadcaster on all things local government.
Hi everyone, it's VLGA Connect time and time for our weekly look at the local government governance stories of the week here on TGU, and I'm delighted to have with me, as usual, Tony Raunic from Hunt & Hunt Lawyers, our terrific sponsors. Hi Tony.
G'day Chris, and they keep coming, these local government stories, don't they? Another big week.
Another. There's always something to talk about, isn't there? Quite a lot this week. We want to send our best wishes to Julie Reid, who was going to join us this week, but she's a bit under the weather, which I can understand. I've been struggling with a bug for nearly a month now, so I hope you haven't got that one, Julie.
Don't you go down, Chris, or it's me. We're in the
soldier on.
We'll be leaving in droves.
So it'll take a lot. It'll take a lot to knock me off and out of the VLGA studio, Tony. That's how much we love it here. Let's talk about probably the main story is another municipal monitor, and the interesting thing about this one is it's the second monitor for the same council within a 12-month period. And we're talking about Strathbogie, where Peter Stevenson has been appointed for 3 months as of this week to help with some governance issues. It's pretty unusual to have two within that period of time, Tony.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And really it seems to be an element of follow-on from Janet Dawes' previous role as a monitor last year, in the report that came out either late last year or early this year from Janet. And the government say, or the minister says, that she's responding to serious concerns about governance and conduct that have been raised with her by councillors, council staff, and I think by independent members of the Audit and Risk Committee there. So look, it's a bit ominous from my perspective, as you know, the next step is administrators or something. So I imagine that everyone at Strathbogie is treating this extremely seriously. I'm not saying they weren't before, but obviously it's a significant step for the minister to appoint a second monitor in the same term of council.
So we'll just note that at the time of recording at 9:07 a.m. on Friday, the 19th of May, Tony's predicted administrators for Strathbogie Shire. I'm sure that's not quite what you were saying, Tony, but you're right. It probably is a next step if this can't be resolved in this period, because, as you say, the monitor's been charged with following up on why the outcomes of the first monitor's report have not been successful. I forget what the wording was. There's a statement on the Strathbogie website, one of the better council websites, by the way, to look at and find information. Kudos to the team there. And Mayor Binks has pointed out that the issues have been raised by councillors, by staff, and very unusually, I think, the members of the Audit and Risk Committee, as you say. So they've obviously got some concerns about risk in certain areas that they want to be looked at more closely.
Yeah, I thought it was quite pointed, the terms of reference. There's an element of, the monitor reporting back about not just, what actions had been taken in response to Janet Dawes' report, but, the ability of councillors to give effect to that advice, which, sort of suggestive of some concerns that the minister has.
But also this health and safety aspect, which has been coming up in a lot of these monitor terms of reference of late, the concerns about impacts of whatever's going on the health and safety of not just the councillor cohort, but the council staff as well.
Yeah, and I think that's appropriate, that be an area of concern in all councils, going to be really interesting to see what Peter Stevenson has to say, or his observations on what's going on at Strathbogie.
So Peter has experience as a monitor and is a former mayor and councillor, and I think there's a clue in the fact that it's just a 3-month appointment, so clearly the minister's wanting a quick resolution to this, or a quick plan for what needs to happen, because elections are not that far away. They're just a bit over a year away now. All right, so no doubt we'll have some more to say on the situation at Strathbogie as that 3-month term runs through. Geelong in the news again. It's the gift that keeps on giving at the moment, Tony, and I pay special attention because I'm in the city of Greater Geelong. The kerfuffle at the moment is about libraries. It's one of the issues that's come up through the council's draft budget process. The council has understandably and rightly said they've made a number of decisions about financial management in this draft budget. And one of those is it's been variously called a shortfall in funding or a slight increase that wasn't to the level that was expected by the Geelong Regional Library Corporation. And they've made the call to close 3 libraries as a result, which has not gone down well in some parts of the community.
Oh, absolutely. And when you say it hasn't gone down well, I'm not surprised that any discussion about contracting library services would have, considerable community angst. I mean, it's such an emotive issue, libraries, swimming pools. I mean, for people all of us who or most of us who are sort of 30 plus, probably have a really strong memory connection with the library when we grew up. For me, it was the Ballarat Library in Camp Street. And I remember as a little child, in the 70s, walking in excitement about, reading books and my imagination and learning things. And I think as adults, we remember that. And libraries are, such an emotive thing and a significant thing for the community. Look, the reality is what we're talking about here are both the Regional Library Corporation and the City of Greater Geelong producing draft budgets for community consultation or engagement.
Yeah.
So absolutely, there are some messages there about what those organisations' thinking is, but there's no sort of finality about a decision as yet. But what's occurred is that, according to the City of Greater Geelong website, the funding that Greater Geelong Council provide to Geelong Regional Library Corporation will in fact go up. In the draft budget, will go up for the year 23-24. It just won't go up to the year on year to the extent that Geelong Regional Library Corporation hoped, particularly in light of some new libraries opening in the area. And I know I personally had some involvement legally in assisting the council in relation to the Armstrong Creek town centre redevelopment, which includes a large new library. And I think the corporation is concerned about, the ongoing costs of running that library and has made some announcements, as you say, about closing Highton, Barwon Heads and Geelong West libraries and winding back hours on some weekends. And some other measures to basically reduce costs. So I'm mindful that the council has come out and said that their intention was not to see these libraries closed, that it's a decision of the corporation, and that the council wanting to meet with the corporation. And to be fair to the corporation, I think the CEO has come out and said she would like to meet with council as well to see if they can work through these issues. I did hear an interview on ABC Radio, Virginia Trioli, where the Mayor, Trevor Sullivan, spoke, and really one of the messages coming through was, we hope we can sort this out with the corporation, but the council's very committed to those 3 libraries remaining open. And it seemed to be that, alternative on the table was that council might need to consider taking over the running of the libraries if they couldn't reach some satisfactory.
I thought that was quite pointed. I've just got to correct you on one thing, Tony. Trent Sullivan is the name of the
Trent,
not Trevor. I'm not sure whether Trent is a listener. But yeah, I thought the statement was quite pointed. It was there was a veiled threat in there, or maybe it wasn't that veiled, that if you can't run the libraries that we have within the funding envelope that's being provided to you and make cuts in other ways to allow that to happen, we will consider taking back the running of those libraries, basically bring them back in-house. Could be a bit of a case of careful what you wish for there, because generally it costs a bit more to run those sorts of services in-house in a council organisation, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think that might be right. And there's potentially some efficiencies with a corporation that runs 19 or so libraries with, Colac, Otway and Surf Coast and Golden Plains and other sort of neighbouring councils. But I think I think there's a political reality here, and not for me to say make decisions for City of Greater Geelong councillors, but the reality I think is that libraries, very emotive. Closing a library in the lead up to an election year be a very difficult thing for a council. To me, it's a bit like there's sacrosanct things at a Commonwealth level, negative gearing. I don't know. At state level, it's probably bring tolls back on the West Great Bridge or something.
Tony, hush your mouth.
So I think I can understand the reaction of the council and councillors, and I think that I imagine no matter what the budget position the council would be looking to find a way to keep these libraries operating and open and accommodating the needs of the community. And I've certainly seen in the media, people at the Highton Library coming out concerned about the travel that they would have to have.
Yeah, look, there's no winners in that scenario. There's a couple of points I do want to make. The council's been quite open, I think, for some months about having to make some tough financial decisions given the current environment. Every council is being faced with these sorts of decisions. Greater Geelong is one of the largest, so obviously the size and the impact of those decisions is going to be on a larger scale. What is concerning me about this is very little narrative about other levels of government's responsibility here. Tony, we know that the state contributes to libraries, but it is a contribution that has reduced over time in real terms. Yet we've got this, and I do feel for the councillors at Geelong, we've got this what's feeling like a political pylon when you've got local MPs, now a federal MP writing letters and publicising that they've done so, appropriately being treated as a submission to the budget, I noted, which I don't think is very helpful in the overall scheme of how do councils manage finances in a really tough, challenging economic environment.
I absolutely agree, firstly, with what you've said, and particularly for state government members to be piling on here when it's the state government that has brought in the rate capping regime that has led to councils only being able to increase rates in the previous years by 1.75%. We haven't seen that restraint from state government in terms of their charges and taxes, if you like. And yet, there's this narrative that, get your house in order, councillors. Well, perhaps the state government has been a part of causing some of these problems. And to be fair to Greater Geelong, there are quite a number of councils across the state that have some real, pointed financial sustainability presently, and across the sector, there's absolutely that challenge. I would say for the Regional Library Corporation, I think that the point that the CEO was making that I saw in the media was that she felt that the corporation hadn't been engaged in relation to this decision, and she found that it came suddenly. I'm not sure what occurred behind the scenes, but it would seem that moving forward, there's clearly going to be a conversation between the corporation and the council, and hopefully that can lead to a result that sees some sustainability around keeping facilities open.
And that may well be what's occurred from their perspective, at least, and it is always an issue around whether the right level of engagement and consultation has occurred, and it's something that councils need to be always very mindful of. Just on a side note, while we're talking about this issue, Tony, as we speak, people are gathering for the MAV State Council today, and there's some pretty big issues on the agenda for discussion, and one of them is financial sustainability. And I know because he's shared some information with me, the Mayor of Glen Eira, Jim McGee, is speaking to a motion that Glen Eira's put up today, calling on the MAV to take a leading role in calling for the long-term sustainability of local government through a number of things. Jim makes some really excellent points, including the fact that councils are responsible for managing 33% of the nation's infrastructure, but has access to 3.8% of tax revenues. I reckon that's the crux of it, isn't it? And we're going to see things like this library issue in Geelong playing out in various ways all across not just Victoria but the country in the coming months.
That's an extraordinary statistic, and well done to Jim McGee and the MAB for bringing that to the fore. And I think we just keep repeating that statistic, we're going to get some traction, hopefully.
Yeah, maybe. All right, let's move on. Speaking of the MAV, the State Council today, they brought together, I think, around 100 mayors yesterday, or they can't have been all mayors because we've only got 79 in Victoria, but about 100 people, I think, gathered at what was labelled by at least the ABC as a crisis meeting to discuss how councils can better manage these increasing disruptions to council meetings. David Clark put out a statement late yesterday saying it was a positive discussion. There wasn't a lot really to take out of it in terms of concrete actions. What was your take on that, Tony?
Yeah, I saw that it seemed largely be, the councils coming along to hear from Victoria Police about, how to best deal with these disruptive, aggressive protesters. And I saw on the statement on that MAV or David Clark put out was that, the clear takeout was that to ensure that councils had a clear understanding of all the issues that they're facing, the need to provide a safe workplace for staff, etc. But look, can I say, I think this is to me, this is one of the most significant things that has faced the sector in years. And there's a need for, I think, immediate legislative intervention by the state. And we know that can happen because, it was only, was it last weekend that we saw protesters doing the Sieg Heil salute?
Yeah.
And already, there's a Senate parliamentary committee talking about banning that salute. I think there's even a draft bill being talked about in the media less than a week later. Why can't we move as quickly in the state parliament to deal with protecting the operation of our local democracy? And I think that, we know that decisions in the state parliament are no less, controversial than the decisions that are made in local government. There's, in fact, more media often about them, and yet disrupting state parliament or the floor of the parliament, stopping the parliament from operating is quite a rare thing. And I think because people know that if you go and do that, you can protest outside with your placards, but if you go and, disrupt from the public gallery, you'll be arrested, there'll be consequences, and it doesn't happen. And one of the things that, I investigated and saw that why doesn't it happen? Well, there are standing orders in both houses of parliament where, certainly in the Legislative Assembly, the Sergeant at Arms has the power to order the arrest of a member of the gallery. They call them a stranger, but, someone can be arrested for disrupting the operation of the parliament, for, not respecting, the operation of that level of democracy. I think we actually need a specific offence, and the publicity that will flow from, telling people about this offence to deter people. In my experience with protesters at council, you can get large groups, but there's a core of 2 or 3 people who, bring the group together, and often the greater proportion have some concerns, but they come along, and maybe the herd mentality then gets people saying things they wouldn't normally say. And I think that if people were aware that it's a significant issue disrupting a council meeting, you can be arrested, there's a specific charge, I think people would give pause for thought in terms of participating in these sort of disruptive gatherings.
Yes.
Like we do in terms of Parliament. Lots of people go along and protest at Spring Street and march up and down, but not a lot of people will go in the gallery and start yelling out or trying to walk across the parliamentary floor. It rarely happens, and I think there's a reason for that. I think we know there are consequences.
Yeah, I think you make some excellent points there, and I haven't really heard too much about going down that path. Coincidentally, There was a note, I think, in that MAV statement about this being a global issue, and that's spot on. There's increasing stories coming from all corners of the globe about these types of disruptions at the local government level. Just last week in Utah, a mayor has removed the right for anyone to address the council from their, we'll call them governance rules, whatever they call them there. And under Utah state law, if you disrupt a council meeting, you can be arrested, you can be charged and face 6 months in jail and a fine as well, potentially. So there are jurisdictions where those types of penalties or deterrents are in place, Tony. So good question. Why can't we have that here?
Yeah, I just think we need to, really be so motivated to preserve the operation of our democracy. I think we need to treat that issue in terms of the ordinary meetings being able to proceed, the process of democracy occurring publicly, to be able to proceed at a Commonwealth, state and local level. We need to really treasure that and treat quite differently any disruption of that to any other, protest that occurs somewhere else in relation to a discrete issue. There's a right to protest, but there's never a right to disrupt the operation of, democracy.
Yep. It's spot on about getting the right balance there, obviously. All right, Tony, time's getting away. Let's touch on a few other stories that have occurred this week. I just want to make a point to some feedback that's been coming in lately. We don't profess to know everything that's happened in local government. We don't profess to be on top of every story. If there's something that you've seen that we've missed, by all means, let us know about it and we can follow it up on future episodes. But here's one that did catch my eye. The councillors at Wodonga, who've been in the news over the Municipal Monitor's report very recently, have rejected the recommended rate rise of 3.5%, which would have been in line with the rate cap, and in the chamber have gone with a 2% rate rise and some cuts to the budget to fund that. I'm not aware of any others at this point, Tony, that have gone down that path, but they may not be alone.
I would not be surprised if a few councils, particularly regional councils in the vicinity, are, some of those councils may be getting nervous and thinking, we were going for 3.5 and we will be compared to Wodonga unfavourably. But I do think, generally speaking, across the sector, we're likely to see, just because of the pressures faced by councils in trying to balance their budgets, we're likely to see most councils at the 3.5% rate cap. The mayor of Wodonga did cite, cost of living pressures as a, concern, rightly so, that the councillors have for their community. But, I think that I don't imagine that this is some sort of example that would be followed lavishly across the sector, but I guess we'll wait and see.
We will wait and see. I think one of the councillors made the point, and this is always something that I think councillors need to keep in the back of their mind as they're making these very difficult decisions. Let's not forget that these are difficult and wicked problems in many cases. That going with that less than 3.5% rate rise would equate to foregoing revenue compounded over a 10-year period of about $10 million on the bottom line. So that's not insignificant when you've got all these other challenges to deliver services, to maintain assets, and in many cases, deliver new assets.
Yeah, and I think for councillors and council officers, perhaps watching this podcast, one of the lessons is look at this holistically. We've just been talking about Greater Geelong and, the angst in the community about the seemingly necessary, tightening of belts there because of a financial crisis, and one wouldn't wish that upon any council to be faced with those circumstances. And as you've just explained, there are long-term implications for not trying to ensure that rates and charges continue to increase at a rate that's fortunately won't be comparable to inflation, given rate capping, but is as close as we can get.
All right, here's one of those stories I did miss. This occurred while I was overseas last month. A councillor at Shire stood down. Joe Gauci, at the time of resigning, made some allegations about some council processes as I understand it. Don't know anything in regard to detail, but the mayor at the time said those allegations would be properly investigated and the findings revealed in due course. And the reason this did come to my attention was this week the new councillor was elected through a countback process, but it wasn't really a countback because they were the only candidate from the elections in 2020 that were still eligible to be elected. So congratulations to Farhat Firdous, who's joining Borbor Council.
Yeah. So Farhat is a co-founder and chair, I think, of a group called Intercultural Exchange Inc., which, according to the website, it's a community-minded organisation aimed at fostering safe places. I've had a bit to do with Borbor Shire Council officers and councillors over the past year or so. Joe Gorchie was the councillor who resigned, expressed some concerns about some procurements at council, and as you say, Anne-Marie McCabe, the mayor, and the CEO Mark Dupay have both come out and said there'll be a full investigation of some of those concerns raised by former councillor Gorchie, and I'll get to meet Farhat in person in the near future, because I've been asked to assist with some of her induction training. Chris,
excellent. They couldn't have anyone better.
Warragul. Yeah.
Excellent. I hope you get a nice day for the day trip. It's a bit of a lottery at the moment, isn't it, weather-wise? A couple of other notes. Our congratulations to a former member of the local government family, but always welcome is Tracy Slatter, was the CEO at Port Phillip, has been, I think, for about 6 years, the CEO at Barwon Water now, and was announced this week as the new CEO of the TAC. She'll be taking up that role in July, and I think that's a terrific appointment. Do you know Tracy, Tony?
No, but that'll keep her in the Geelong region, I think, because I think the TAC is headquartered there. So
that's correct. Yes, and the former CEO stepping down very soon announced that he was leaving a few months ago now, after 8 years in the role. And big congratulations to Carl Cowie, the CEO at Nillumbik. His 4-year term is coming to an end in October, and this week the council has announced that he's been appointed or reappointed on a second 4-year term, which will take effect in October. So that'll take him through to at least an 8-year term heading up Nillumbik Shire. So well done, Carl.
Yeah, I do know Carl, and one of those Scottish imports to Australia, Carl, formerly.
But we can balance that with the fact that he's a Hawthorn supporter.
Oh, okay, that's all right.
It swings and roundabouts.
Ex Mornington Peninsula as well, CEO, and lots of congratulations to him and the council too, because there are lots and lots of capital works projects in Nillumbik, of course, close to my heart, not far from where I reside, and I've been enjoying running along the Diamond Creek Trail, the new extension of the Diamond Creek Trail that Carl and the team there have been really working on over the last several years.
Yes, they're doing some great work. I should declare I'm still on the Audit and Risk Committee at Nillumbik, just for, I think, one more meeting. It'll be one of my last regular gigs that I'm giving away. Tony, what's your pick of the week this week, if you have one?
It's interesting. I thought, given the topic of rate rises and draft budgets, I thought I'd have a bit of a look around and see what's occurring outside our state borders, where rate capping either doesn't exist or exists in another form. And I had a look at South Australia, and according to reports of draft budgets there, and there is no rate capping, as I understand it, in South Australia. Councils are significantly higher than our 3.5% cap in terms of draft budgets. Coorong District Council is at 10% in their draft budget. Grant, which is the area surrounding Mount Gambier, is at 7.6%. Narracourt is at 5%. Tatiara at 5%. So certainly it's suggestive that if we didn't have this sort of rate cap scenario in Victoria, we'd certainly be significantly higher rate.
And you're right, they don't have a rate cap there. I think Victoria and New South Wales are the only two states with some form of rate capping. In New South Wales, it's been in for a long time. We heard last night from Kerry Robinson on our global panel, the CEO of Bankstown, about the impact of that. And a lot of councils are going for significant rate rises this year. So apparently that IPART regime has relaxed a bit in terms of the capacity or the willingness to support larger rate rises. So remains to be seen how significant they'll be in New South Wales. But as we know, in Victoria, it won't be any more than 3.5%. I haven't heard of anyone applying to go above the rate cap. Have you, Tony?
No, I haven't. I
No.
haven't heard of that.
I'm pretty sure there hasn't been anyone.
We wouldn't, you'd think it'd be one of the councils in financial crisis, if you like. And, the noise we're hearing from certain state government members doesn't suggest that there'd be a lot of a receptive.
Yes, and a final note, perhaps we did have our first global panel of the year last night between VLGA and LGIU with a Scottish CEO, a policy advisor from Ireland, and Kerry Robinson from Blacktown, and Darren Fazard from Mount Alexander Shire in Victoria, talking about the financial challenges, the various things they're doing to cope with those, particularly as we get into budget time. It was a fascinating discussion, and for VLGA and LGIU members, you'll be able to watch that back if you missed it very soon through the VLGA Connect channel. I think that brings us to an end. Tony, how's your week ahead looking? When's that trip to Warragul?
I think that's a week after, but this week's been busy. I was at Campaspe this week in Echuca, and then at Wyndham with the exec team there on Monday as well. I think I'm at Darebin.
Okay. You are getting around.
Yeah, I am getting around, but fun. I'm enjoying it. What about you, Chris?
Very little, Tony, and that's by choice. So just a lot of reading and getting ready for the next issue of TGU, which will come to you next Friday with you, hopefully, Tony, and hopefully Julie will be back on deck and feeling all right as well. So thanks as always. Yes.
I just remembered next week is, of course, the LG Pro conference. I think is next week. So I'll be very excited to be participating in that and talking to colleagues.
Excellent. All right. Enjoy that. Be the first one I've missed probably for quite some time. But I'm sure we'll hear all about it. So thank you. That's TGU for this week, sponsored by Hunt & Hunt Lawyers. Don't forget to stay subscribed on YouTube or on your podcast player. What we do have coming next week is an interview with Andrew Greaves, the Victorian Auditor General. Look out for that episode. If you haven't caught up, go back and catch up with our local leaders episode featuring Brent McAllister, the CEO at Northern Grampians Shire Council. That's available for your listening or viewing pleasure right now. And I think that's where we'll call it a day. Thanks for your company, and we'll see you again soon on VLGA Connect.